I got used to being alone in ways that still scare me. Not dramatically, quietly. The kind that happens one winter morning at a time until you realize nobody's touched your shoulder in months. The kind where silence starts recognizing you before people do. I'm older now. Old enough to know exhaustion can live inside a person without anyone noticing. Successful enough to hide it well. I spent years moving through airports, hotel elevators, empty dressing rooms, smiling at strangers while something in me kept going dimmer. I almost stopped recording this. Part of me still thinks I should. But there's something about you that won't let me stay silent anymore. And that's uncomfortable to admit. You probably don't even know what you've done to me yet. Or maybe you do. Maybe you've always been the kind of woman who notices things people try hard to bury. I remember this one night in Chicago. I think it was Chicago. Funny how loneliness blurs geography after a while. Could been Toronto. Could been 10 years ago. I was standing in a hotel room staring through those giant windows people think look beautiful in movies. City lights everywhere. Expensive room. Half-finished dinner getting cold beside me. Television on mute, and I remember realizing nobody knew where I was emotionally. Not really. There were messages on my phone, work, schedules, interviews, someone asking if I got the revised script, but nobody asking if I was all right. God, I didn't think that bothered me anymore. Anyway, maybe that sounds heavier than I meant it to. I learned how to function without warmth. That's the dangerous part. Human beings can survive almost anything if they do it long enough. We adapt to empty apartments, cold coffee, quiet birthdays. We convince ourselves independence is peace. I did that for years. Told myself I preferred distance. Told myself needing people complicated things. Truth is, I think I became afraid of being emotionally visible after a while. Because every time someone got close enough to really see me, they eventually left. Or life took them, sometimes suddenly, sometimes slowly. I don't know which hurts worse. There's this sound elevators make late at night in old hotels. A soft mechanical sigh before the doors open. I still associate that sound with loneliness. Isn't that strange? I'd hear it around 2 in the morning coming back from work, exhausted, tie loosened, hands tired, and for 1 second I'd hope someone was waiting inside the room. Nobody ever was. You start pretending that doesn't matter after enough years. You become good at carrying your own life. Too good. And maybe you understand that kind of survival too. Maybe you learned early that asking for comfort doesn't guarantee you'll receive it. Maybe you became quieter because disappointment got exhausting. Maybe people mistook your independence for strength when really you were just adapting. I don't know why I think you'll understand this, but I do. I think some people recognize each other long before they meet, not in a magical way. Nothing like that. More like two exhausted souls hearing the same song through different walls. I remember another night. Airport terminal. Delayed flight. Rain hitting the windows hard enough to sound like static. Everybody irritated. Bright fluorescent lights making everyone look lonelier than they probably were. There was this older woman sitting across from me reading a paperback novel. She looked up once and smiled at me. Just polite. Human. And I almost cried. That's embarrassing to admit. Not because I was sad exactly. I think I'd just gone too long without softness. There's a difference. I never said that out loud before. You know what really scares me? Not heartbreak. Not anymore. What scares me is how easy it became to live without tenderness. How normal emotional starvation started feeling. Like my body forgot affection existed because surviving seemed more important. I buried whole parts of myself just to keep moving. And the strange thing is, people praised me for it. They called me disciplined, grounded, private. But sometimes privacy is just loneliness with better posture. Sorry. That sounded more bitter than I intended. You see? I still do that. Reveal too much, then immediately try to soften it. Old habit. I think the first moment I sensed you, really sensed you, wasn't because of anything you said. It was your quietness, not empty silence, careful silence. Like someone who had also survived things without turning hard. There's a difference between people who are quiet because they have nothing to say, and people who became quiet because life taught them words don't always protect you. You feel like the second kind. And God, I saw you even with my eyes closed. That's the part I'm struggling to explain. It wasn't fantasy, wasn't obsession, nothing reckless. It felt more familiar than that. Like hearing footsteps in another room and somehow knowing who it is before the door opens. I think my soul recognized your exhaustion. Maybe yours recognized mine, too. I still wake up some mornings automatically making too much coffee. Habit, I guess. The apartment stays quiet except for traffic outside and the old pipes knocking behind the walls. And lately, I've caught myself imagining another cup sitting there untouched across from mine. That thought should feel small. But to someone like me, it isn't. It's terrifying, actually. Because hope becomes dangerous once you've spent years surviving without it. Still, something inside me keeps reaching toward you anyway. Maybe that's foolish. Maybe it's the first honest thing I've felt in a very long time. I don't know yet. I just know, some nights, even before sleep finds me, I can already feel the shape of your presence beside the loneliness. And I think part of me was still waiting, even then. There was a time I stopped answering people. Not completely, just emotionally. I could still return calls, smile through interviews, show up where I was expected. But somewhere along the line, I became a man who learned how to disappear while remaining visible. That kind of loneliness is harder to explain. I'm tired in ways sleep doesn't fix anymore. Not tragic, just worn down around the edges. Like an old coat that still works but remembers every winter it survived. I almost deleted this recording tonight. Honestly, part of me still thinks you deserve someone less complicated. But something in me keeps leaning toward you anyway. Quietly, almost against my own permission. And that scares me more than I expected. I remember driving through Nevada one night after a shoot wrapped. Empty highway, radio barely audible. One of those gas stations at midnight where the coffee tastes burnt, no matter how fresh it is. The cashier looked half asleep. There was a moth throwing itself against the fluorescent lights near the ice freezer outside. I stood there holding 2 coffees before realizing there wasn't anyone with me. God. That hurt more than it should have. It's strange what loneliness attaches itself to, not the grand moments, small things, reflexes. Habits your body keeps repeating long after love disappears. I still leave space beside me in elevators sometimes. I noticed that recently. Like some unconscious part of me still expects another person to step in beside me. Maybe grief doesn't leave cleanly. Maybe it lingers inside muscle memory. I don't know. You ever notice how certain nights feel heavier than others for no obvious reason? Like the air itself remembers something your mind can't fully reach anymore. I had one of those nights a few months ago. Couldn't sleep. Apartment dark except for television light flickering against the walls. There were dishes in the sink. A wrinkled shirt hanging over the back of a chair. Rain tapping softly against the windows. And I found an old voicemail. I don't even know why I still had it. Maybe because deleting it would made the loss feel official. Her voice sounded distant, warm, alive in that casual way people are before they become memories. Call me when you land. That was all. 4 words. I sat there listening to them over and over like an idiot. Sorry. Forget that. I think something inside me broke from surviving too many goodbyes. Not all at once. Slowly, quietly, like a ceiling cracking over years before anybody notices. After enough loss, you stop trusting warmth. That's the truth nobody likes admitting. You start assuming love is temporary, even while it's happening. You begin preparing for absence before affection fully arrives. It becomes instinct. And eventually, you push people away before they can leave on their own. There. That's probably the most honest thing I've said so far. I didn't realize how much of my life became emotional self-defense until recently. I thought I was protecting myself by staying detached. Really, I was starving. I think that's why your gentleness unsettled me. You never forced closeness, never demanded anything from me emotionally. You just stayed soft without becoming weak. That's rare. People talk about strength loudly these days. But quiet loyalty? Patience? The ability to sit beside another person's sadness without trying to control it? That's different. You have that. I noticed it immediately. Actually, no, that's not true. I felt it immediately. Noticed it later. There's a difference. I remember sitting across from you that evening. Maybe you didn't even realize I was watching you this carefully. But you kept wrapping your hands around your coffee cup between sentences because the restaurant was cold. Little things like that stay with me. The waitress kept refilling our water glasses. Music playing softly somewhere near the kitchen. Raincoats hanging near the entrance, dripping onto black floor mats. Ordinary night. But my chest felt strangely unguarded sitting there with you, and I hated that at first. I know that sounds unfair. You were kind to me, and my first instinct was caution. That's what happens when someone spends too long surviving alone. Tenderness starts feeling dangerous. Your nervous system mistakes safety for vulnerability because pain once entered wearing affection's face. I wish that weren't true. I wish I could tell you I welcomed you easily. I didn't. Part of me kept waiting for disappointment, waiting for distance, waiting for you to realize I was more emotionally damaged than I appeared. There are nights I still wonder if I know how to be loved correctly anymore. That sounds pathetic saying it out loud. But maybe honesty is ugly sometimes. Maybe healing begins there. You know what I think frightened me most? You saw through the version of me everyone else accepted. The composed man, the capable one, the quiet professional who always seemed fine. You looked at me like you could hear the exhaustion underneath the functioning. Nobody had done that in years, and instead of running from it, you stayed calm, not intrusive, not pitying, just present. God, I forgot how powerful presence could feel. I forgot another human being could make silence feel less hostile. There's this moment I keep replaying lately. Tiny thing, probably meaningless to anyone else. We were walking outside after dinner, cold air, streetlights reflecting off wet pavement. You brushed your hand lightly against my sleeve while laughing at something I said. That was it. But my body reacted like it had remembered something ancient. warmth, safety, home, maybe. I went quiet afterward because I didn't know what to do with the feeling. You probably noticed. I hope you didn't think it was you. It was me fighting the urge to care too much. Because caring changes everything once you've spent years convincing yourself you no longer need anyone. And now here I am, thinking about you during ordinary moments, grocery stores, taxi rides, early mornings when the city still feels half asleep. It's inconvenient, honestly. A little cruel, too, because hope returns slowly at first, then all at once. And I think, somewhere deep down, I'm beginning to fear losing you before I've even fully found you. Maybe that means something. Maybe it just means my heart never actually stopped waiting. I didn't realize how numb I'd become until you made me feel something small. That's the frightening part. It wasn't some dramatic moment. No music, no lightning strike. Just you asking me if I'd eaten that day, with this quiet seriousness that caught me off guard. And suddenly I understood how long I'd been living untouched emotionally. I'm older now. Older in the soul, I think. There's a kind of fatigue that settles into a man after enough years of carrying himself through empty rooms. You become efficient at survival, structured, reliable, lonely in very functional ways. I almost stopped speaking again tonight. There's still a part of me that recoils after honesty, like my body expects vulnerability to cost something. Maybe it usually did. But something inside me keeps reaching back toward you every time I retreat. That's new for me. Or maybe it's old. Maybe I just buried it too deep to recognize it anymore. I remember this apartment I lived in years ago. Tiny kitchen, radiator that knocked all winter long. I used to come home after midnight, loosen my tie, stand there eating takeout directly from the container, because washing another plate felt exhausting somehow. There was a lamp near the couch that flickered when the building's wiring got bad. I never fixed it. Funny the things people stop caring about when they stop believing someone else will ever see their life up close. I think loneliness changes your relationship with maintenance, not just apartments. Yourself too. You stop buying clothes you actually like. Stop cooking real meals. Stop imagining futures that involve another toothbrush near yours. You reduce your life down to survival-sized portions. God. I think I was lonelier than I admitted. Sorry. That came heavier than I intended. You know what's strange? People still thought I was doing well during those years. That's the dangerous thing about functioning sadness. It photographs beautifully sometimes. Nobody sees the silence after. The empty drive home, the medicine bottles beside the sink, the television left running so the apartment doesn't feel completely dead. I got very good at pretending I preferred solitude. Truth is, I think I became terrified of needing anyone after loss hollowed me out enough times. Because needing someone means they gain the power to leave. And abandonment doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it happens slowly. Calls become shorter. Affection becomes distracted. Your grief becomes inconvenient to somebody else's happiness. You feel yourself becoming emotionally replaceable in real time. That kind of pain rewires a person. I know it rewired me. There was a woman once who told me I was hard to reach emotionally. I laughed when she said it, not because it was funny. I think I just felt exposed. She wasn't wrong. I'd mastered the art of giving people enough of me to stay, while hiding the parts that actually needed love. Maybe that's why things kept falling apart. Maybe people can sense when someone is emotionally holding the door halfway closed. I never thought about that until now. You make me think about things I avoided for years. That's inconvenient, too. There's this bookstore downtown I sometimes disappear into when I can't handle being home too early. Old wooden floors, dust in the air, quiet jazz playing softly near the register. I went there a few weeks ago. Couldn't focus. Kept rereading the same paragraph. And then I caught myself imagining what kind of books you'd stop to pick up. That realization unsettled me more than it should have, because it meant you had entered the private parts of my mind, the ordinary corners, the places grief used to occupy completely. I wasn't prepared for that. I still don't know if I am. You know something I've never admitted clearly before? Part of me thought love belonged to younger versions of people. Not older souls carrying years of disappointment in their chest. I thought eventually life quietly closes that door. That emotional wonder becomes something you remember instead of something you live. And then you arrived with your careful kindness and ruined that theory completely. Not intentionally. That's what makes it worse. You never tried to save me. You just listened differently than other people. Like you understood pauses mattered as much as words. Like silence wasn't something you rushed to fill. I noticed that the first night you sat beside me without asking me to become lighter for your comfort. Do you know how rare that is? To not feel emotionally edited around someone? God, I think I've been starving for that longer than I knew. And here's the part I'm ashamed of. Sometimes after we talk, I become distant on purpose. Not because I lose interest. Because I feel too much of it. I hate admitting that. You probably deserve someone emotionally fearless. Someone uncomplicated. Someone who doesn't need 3 hours alone after feeling one honest thing. But survival shaped me into a careful man. A man who still flinches internally when tenderness arrives unexpectedly. The other night I almost called you. It was around 1 a.m. City lights coming through the curtains, rain moving softly against the glass. I had your name open on my phone, thumb hovering there like a teenager. Ridiculous, honestly. I kept thinking, don't make her important. Don't let this become something you can lose. And then another thought came right after it. Too late. I sat there for a long time after that, listening to the refrigerator hum in the kitchen, watching headlights slide across the ceiling from the street below. And for the first time in years, my future didn't feel entirely empty. That should have comforted me. Instead, it terrified me, because hope asks more from us than sadness ever does. Sadness lets you hide. Hope requires participation. Maybe that's why I'm struggling to breathe around this feeling sometimes. Maybe some wounded parts of me still expect abandonment even while my heart reaches toward connection. But I know this much now. When I picture peace lately, your presence keeps appearing inside it. And I don't think my soul would do that accidentally. I think I spent years preparing for people to leave, even in good moments. Especially in good moments. That's the kind of damage nobody sees at first. You smile, you function, you make dinner reservations and answer messages and remember birthdays. But somewhere underneath all of it, you're already bracing for absence. I'm tired of living like that. There, I said it. God, even now part of me wants to take the sentence back. I'm older now. Old enough to know survival and living are not the same thing. Old enough to understand a man can become emotionally invisible inside his own life if he stays guarded long enough. I almost walked away from this entirely. From you too. Not physically, maybe, but emotionally, quietly, the way I've done before. Retreat before attachment becomes dangerous. Convince myself distance is maturity. But something inside me refuses to disappear this time. And I think that something is love, or the closest thing to it I've trusted in years. I remember sitting in my apartment one early morning recently. Couldn't sleep again. The city outside still dark, except for traffic lights changing colors for nobody. Coffee growing cold beside me. One lamp on near the window. I was wearing an old gray sweater I should thrown away years ago. And for some reason, I started thinking about all the versions of myself that survived long enough to reach this moment. The younger man who thought success would protect him from loneliness. The grieving man who stopped unpacking emotionally because loss kept following him into every room. The exhausted man who learned how to sleep diagonally across a bed so emptiness felt intentional. I felt sorry for him suddenly, for all of them. Not in a dramatic way, just quietly. Like realizing someone you judged harshly was actually hurting the entire time. I think I buried my heart to survive, not because I wanted to become cold, because feeling everything fully became too expensive after a while. Loss takes pieces from people. That's true. But sometimes survival takes pieces too. You become practical, careful, efficient, and eventually you forget softness was ever supposed to be part of your life. Until someone gentle walks in and your soul remembers before your mind does. You did that to me. Still doing it, honestly. I notice it in ridiculous moments now. Passing a bookstore and wondering if you'd like the window display. Hearing a song in the grocery store and thinking about your laugh before I realize I'm smiling alone beside tomatoes. Wanting to text you small, meaningless things simply because they reminded me of you. That one bothers me most because it feels dangerously close to happiness. And happiness, after enough heartbreak, can feel almost suspicious. I know that probably sounds sad. Maybe it is. But it's honest. There's something else I need to admit. I think part of me believed I had already experienced my last real chance at love years ago. That whatever came afterward would only be smaller versions of connection. Safer versions. Dimmer ones. Then you looked at me with those patient eyes like I was still worth understanding. And suddenly I wasn't so certain anymore. I remember that night outside your building. Cold air. Both of us pretending not to delay goodbye, your hair moving slightly in the wind, streetlights glowing soft against the sidewalk. You asked me if I was all right. Simple question. But the way you asked it, carefully, like the answer mattered. I almost told you everything. How lonely I'd really been. How many nights I spent sitting in silence, because silence felt easier than risking disappointment. How terrified I was that if you saw all the damaged parts clearly, you'd eventually step away too. Instead, I just nodded. Yeah, I said. Lie. You probably knew it was a lie. You have this way of hearing emotions underneath words. It unnerves me sometimes. But lately, it comforts me too. That's new. I don't think you realize how much courage it takes for someone like me to stay emotionally present once feelings become real. Every instinct still tells me to retreat, to regain control, to protect the quiet numbness I built my life around. But numbness isn't peace. I know that now. It's just absence stretched across time. And I don't want to disappear inside my own life anymore. Not if you're standing here. Not if there's still time for warmth. I think about aging sometimes, more than I admit publicly. The strange ache of realizing years move faster now. The fear of becoming one of those men who slowly shrink emotionally until all that's left are routines and old photographs. That fear used to feel inevitable. Now it feels interrupted by you. Not because you rescued me. You didn't. You simply reminded me I was still human underneath all the survival. That's different. And maybe that's what real love does in the end. Not save us from pain. Just return us gently to ourselves after years of emotional exile. I never thought I'd want to be fully seen again. Now I catch myself hoping you'll keep looking. That thought still scares me. But it doesn't scare me enough to run anymore. I think that matters. There's rain outside, Tunt. Soft rain. The kind that makes the whole city quieter. My apartment lamp is still on beside me, and for once the silence doesn't feel hostile, just unfinished. Like life is waiting respectfully outside the door while I gather the courage to let someone in completely. And for the first time in years, the empty space beside me no longer feels impossible to imagine filled. I think that's because somewhere along the way, without meaning to, I stopped imagining survival and started imagining you. If any part of this felt familiar, stay nearby. Subscribe, share your story, or just listen a little longer. Nobody gets through this life completely alone.